Hartrich. I'm a quilter and I love to put words on my quilts. What about you? Have you ever put text on a quilt? There are so many ways you can do it, but today I'm going to show you an alphabet I designed a while ago that uses traditional piecing to make these really bold, modern letters using just 3 simple blocks. And those blocks are a drunkard's path, a half square triangle, and a solid square. You might recognize this quilt behind me from QuiltCon 2015, where it won People's Choice Award. That was a super exciting moment for me, and it was actually the first time that I ever used this style of letters in a quilt of mine. Since then, I've gone on to use them in many different quilts, many projects, and I just want to walk you through how I do it today. So to begin, I use my sketchbook, which has graph paper. Graph paper is a perfect choice for this because the letters are a grid-based design, and it also allows me to scale my design up or down depending on what I need. So typically I will decide approximately how big I'd like the quilt to be. Then I can sort of do a backwards calculation and decide how big each of my squares in my quilt should be. This is the chart with the full alphabet here. This is going to be available to you in the show notes, so you can come back and check the website later and use this as a resource if you'd like to. This is the sketch of the other quilt behind me here. You can see how I planned my colors, and actually you can see the sketch a little easier here. This vellum is sort of a piecing map that I made to plan out my piecing for this one. And here are some ideas of how you might use this alphabet to begin with. They do tend to sprawl and take up a lot of space, so I don't recommend that you use them for anything too wordy. They're really great for things like names, single words, and short phrases. Here's a sketch of my current project. You can see that I've used a lighter background and then darker or more saturated colors for the letters. You could also do the opposite. You could use a darker background and then lighter letters, but the goal is to create contrast so that the letters pop, they're more easily read. One more design tip is that I like to choose a lot of different colors for my letters. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is that I love a colorful quilt. You can see in both these examples behind me, I've used different colors for most of the letters. The other reason is that it allows me to put my letters right up next to each other. And in all my examples here, you can see that the letters just butt up right next to each other. That is how I designed them to be used. It saves space. I think it looks cool. But if you wanted to use just one single color for your letters, you can do that. I've done that before, but in that case, I would recommend that you put some space between each letter. Okay, now, since this alphabet that I've designed has so many curves, I'm going to show you how I sew a drunkard's path block. Let me move this. So here, I've worked ahead a little bit. I've cut my pieces from my plastic templates here. And this is my L shape that my template tells me. So this is for the scrap bin. This is my pie shape. So this is scrap. I'm done with my templates. I'm just going to fold these on a diagonal and give a little finger press in the center right here. And again, I'm gonna fold this piece and just do a little press right here in the center. I'm going to line these up. I like to have the L shape towards me here. And then the pie shape, I'm just going to flip over the top. I'm going to line up these creases. And I'm just going to put in 1 pin. And now I am ready to sew this. So I'm going to move to the sewing machine. And I'm just using cotton quilting thread to piece. So, starting with the pie shape facing up towards me, I'm just going to join these 2 corners here and get them under my foot, sewing at a 1/4 inch seam. And I'm just going to begin. If this machine will, yeah, here we go. All right. So, all you're doing is easing these two edges together of your curve. The way I like to think about sewing curves is to pretend that I'm sewing a straight line. You can't let the curve psych you out. You have to just remember all you're doing is joining edges. That's what you're doing when you're doing pretty much any type of piecing, either straight or curved. So just get those edges lined up and go just a couple stitches past your pin, and then I'm going to stop, cut my thread, and I'm actually going to flip, let's take this pin out actually. I'm going to flip this unit over and begin again from the other side. So now the L shape is facing up towards me. I'm gonna join these corners again and just start sewing at 1/4 inch. Just lining up your edges, easing everything together. It seems fiddly, but it works. You're doing it, you're sewing a curve. Okay, when you get to that line of stitching that you just did, just go a couple stitches past it. That's gonna lock everything into place and secure your stitching. And this is done. You sewed a curve. Good job. Okay, now we need to press this block. I've got one over here that I'm gonna press. When I'm pressing curves, I like to press the seam down toward the point of the pie, trying not to pull or tug too much. You don't want to stretch anything. And here is our block. There's one more step before we're ready to use this in our design, and that is to trim this block. So this here, this coral color is all background, and this is too much. I don't want to leave all of this because if I do, my letters won't come together correctly. So I'm just going to use a square ruler. I'm going to use the 1/4 inch markings on the ruler and put them right here and right here on the sides of the curve. And I'm just going to trim. And now you can see there's just this 1/4 inch background, which will then get eaten in the seam allowance, and that will create the letters perfectly. So this is ready to be used in a design. Now, very quickly, oops, if you know how to make an inset circle or a 6-minute circle, that's an alternative approach to piecing these. You can make your circle, trim it the same way, so there's just a 1/4 inch outside the circle. And then I lost one of my pieces, but once you cut it in 1/4, magic, you've got 4 little drunkard's paths. I do this technique sometimes if I'm making a lot of blocks or if I'm working at a smaller scale. I find it a little easier, but if you want to piece the traditional way, one by one, you can totally do that. I just wanted to show you this as an option. And now I have been working behind the scenes. I've sewed all my drunkard's paths, my half square triangles, and I've cut it out everything. I'm ready to use my design wall. So give me 1 second to set that up and we'll be right back. Okay, so here's everything up on my design wall. You can see that I've pretty much pieced this whole top row. Here in the middle, the letters are pieced together. And here on the last row, I'm still working. So I'm gonna go ahead and add these blocks that I just finished making to complete this Y. How I tend to do this is go letter by letter, and I will say join 4 blocks at a time, the 4 underneath them, and then I'll join these to complete this letter B, and then I will just continue on with the rest of my letters. When it comes to the background of these quilts, you have some choices to make. So you could completely fill in all your negative space with a single background fabric like I've done here, or you could use it as an opportunity to include more piecing and more design elements. In this quilt, every square that's not part of a letter is a drunkard's path, and I did that just to add more interest and movement. So these letters are really simple to put together. They're really bold, graphic, and fun, and I hope you'll try some in one of your quilts.